Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thanks for coming. It's 6:04, and all members are here but one, so we will get started as soon as everyone takes their seats. There's only, hello, everyone. There's only 2 items on the agenda, so, yeah. Okay, so we've called the meeting to order. There's an agenda with just 2 items of business. I think that's everything that's in the agenda. So we need a mover and a seconder for the agenda. Councillor Neal and... Okay, so there's a proposal from Councillor Neal to add an item under other business. Do you want to tell us the topic? So commentary from Kief on the official plan wording, is that? Okay. So we need a seconder to add that to under other business, seconded by Councillor Holland. So that's just added to the agenda. If the agenda passes, it's with that added item. All those in favor? And opposed, and that carries. So then there's 3 items on the agenda now. Next is confirmation of minutes, but this is a special meeting, so there aren't any. Any disclosure of pecuniary interest? No pecuniary interest with the Kief items. Delegations, no delegations, correct. I guess. Briefing, no, correct. No briefing. So just straight to business, item A. So this is the report received from Kief, the Kingston Environmental Advisory Forum mandate, the updated mandate, and then the Kingston Environmental Advisory Forum report card for 2018. So we'll go to that first item, item 7A, number 1. We've got a member of staff here that can introduce that report, and then we'll go through the procedures. Go ahead, Mr. McClatchy.
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Kief received this report, gosh, I don't have the date in front of me, but they received it and accepted the recommendations to change the mandate of Kief. This comes about because, as many people know, the business of Kief has been challenging over the last few years, difficulty focusing on specific tasks that are before them. The recommended changes are 4-fold, or I should say really 3-fold. We aimed for 4 things, and they are focusing the mandate of Kief to focus on an annual State of the Environment report, and working on assignments that are directed to them from council. The second thing is reducing the size of the committee. Right now, this committee, I believe, is 21 people, and we're recommending a reduction in the number of public representatives. That won't happen immediately. That'll happen over time through attrition until the committee gets to the target size. The third thing is removing standing committees from Kief. One of Kief's problems was they had standing committees that were regularly meeting on a certain topic, even though there wasn't always an assignment before Kief on that topic from council. So it made it a little bit difficult for them to do their work, and for the members of those working groups to remain interested, I think. So we're moving the mandate from standing committees to ad hoc committees, so Kief can create recommendations to create ad hoc committees that will allow them to respond to whatever issue is before them from council. The fourth thing we wanted to do was change the way the technical representatives on Kief function. Because there's quite a number of them, absences of technical representatives were challenging quorum of Kief. We wanted to find a way where technical representatives could act as almost like ex officio members and attend on an as-needed basis or attend without voting privileges, but there's nothing in our committee bylaws that would permit that to happen. So we, apart from reducing the number of technical representatives from Queen's University from 2 to 1, there was no changes to the technical representatives in the mandate. So the mandate has been adjusted and it would be enacted through an amendment to the committee's bylaw.
Great. So that is the introduction. So you'll see the report there, and what we have now questions for staff from members of the committee about the report itself, about the mandate of Kief. So questions on the report are in order. Councillor Osterhoff.
Thank you. I just wondered, I don't know much about Kief, but I'm just wondering about the process to get to this point and how it's been received and what kind of support there is within the present structure. And is it by common consent, or is this something that is readily understood as necessary? What's it been like? I don't know much about it. Maybe you can tell me.
I think, through you, Mr. Chair, in my opinion, looking at how Kief has operated over the last 3 or 4 years, and some of the issues of attrition that we've seen and people coming on to Kief with certain expectations and then leaving, I think that's a measure of some of the challenges that were present within the committee. So I think there is especially amongst those on the committee that have some experience, there is an acceptance that the mandate needs to change to focus Kief into a more productive work mode. And that's what I experienced at the last meeting.
The aspect of his question that was basically that the members are aware of the updated mandate and they're aware of the changes that are coming, and any feedback about that?
That's correct. The members did receive the report that's here and did ask questions and examine it in a fulsome way. And at the end of the meeting, I think it was unanimously adopted by Kief.
Great. Okay, Councillor Neal.
Yes, I'm on Kief, and it was an excellent report that staff brought forward, and we had a very thorough discussion. And there were, it's a lot of new faces on Kief, but there were some, initially some hesitation or some concerns that were expressed, but I think they were all appropriately addressed. And as we heard in the discussion around Councillor Sanik's motion and the setting up of a working group for climate change, there was recognition that there's a place for Kief within the whole, our climate change, climate crisis focus that we've committed to. So I'm looking forward to an opportunity to do things both in collaboration and as a continuance of the good work that the Climate Change Action Group will be doing, because they have a very ambitious date in October to be finished by, and clearly that will just be setting up and starting the whole process at that time. So it's good that we have a standing committee with a mandate that can address and make recommendations to address climate change and climate crisis. So, thank you.
Any other questions? I have a question. So regarding quorum issues, it was mentioned in the report, were there meetings of Kief that because of the large membership less than half, or not at least more than half, showed up, and some meetings had to be canceled for lack of quorum. Did that happen?
Yes, happened on several occasions over the last several years, where meetings were either canceled because of lack of business or canceled because of a lack of quorum.
So next question is related to the membership, change in the membership size, as the report recommends. So technical representatives removing one. Now, it's my understanding that currently not all of the technical representative spots are filled. Is that correct?
That is correct. There is a spot for a representative for St. Lawrence College that is not filled, and that is the choice of the agencies that are invited to participate in Kief. They don't have to send a representative if they don't wish, and if they don't, the spot remains vacant, and it does not impact quorum.
So logically follows that. So at the moment, the public membership portion is above the number recommended in the report, but as people drop off, it will come down to that number. And then nominations will get the word if it goes under that number to replace those. But for the technical representatives, they've already been invited, and if they are sitting vacant, that just is not part of quorum. It just sits like that because it's a voluntary participation. So, okay, well that's an important point when you have quorum issues, is the size of the committee, so thank you. Any other questions about the report? Councillor Holland.
Thank you. And through you about the difference between the mandate to fulfill or support council's direction, I suppose, versus the ad hoc groups. So I guess in thinking about the process then, if there was something that comes forward that has not currently been brought forward through strategic planning or recent motions related to the environment, then that would be, there would be some direction to Kief to form a working group to do the work and then report back to council. Is that how it would work?
Through you, yes, that's one way it could work. One way it could work within the current mandate structure is when Kief provides an annual State of the Environment report, they may flag emerging issues that are not currently on the strategic radar of council, and that may precipitate some action that way. But the action is from council to Kief to undertake some research or work or whatever the case is on some environmental matter, and then Kief would create an ad hoc working group to deal with that specific issue with a designated timeline associated with it.
So just to clarify what you just said, so it would require council direction to create an ad hoc working group, and it may be fairly obvious if there's something flagged in the annual state report. Is that correct?
That ain't how the process would work, is that Kief can't necessarily create working groups independently and on their own without the authority of council to do so.
So, Councillor Doherty?
Thank you, and through you, following up on Councillor Stroud's question and the example of St. Lawrence College, do we reach out when there's a vacancy, do we always try to reach out and encourage involvement by some of the institutions or the other members of the group?
I don't want to speak for clerks, but the clerk of the committee does reach out to technical representatives and representatives of the public if there's a period of what's the word I'm looking for? Vacancy. Vacancy, or people that aren't attending.
Okay, we'll go over a second round of questions. Councillor Neal.
Yeah, I'll repeat a little bit of what I said at the Kief meeting when we were discussing it. Kief was originally formed in 2010, thanks to the enthusiasm of Leonore Foster and Bob Foster, 2001. Yeah, what did I say? No, that's when I started. 2001 was when it began. And they were very, very active for over a decade and sharing ideas, bringing ideas forward. But I think we were a little more reliant on them at the time because we didn't necessarily have a lot of a full skill set within our staff. It wasn't, we have a much richer skill set within our staff today. So gradually, Kief kind of fell off that active role between staff and Kief. And there was a little bit of frustration because there were never, ever any encouragement for Kief to ever make comments about the third crossing, which is unfortunate because there were a number of people on Kief at the time. I was on Kief at the time.
Okay, so we're getting a lot of commentary here. This is the staff question portion, and you're going to get a chance to make commentary
Okay,
later. So maybe,
I'll reserve that till later then.
okay, so anyone else, second round of questions? Okay, then we go to members of the public. Questions about the report or comments?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Thanks for the report and the questions so far and the commentary from staff. So I'm someone who follows Kief. I've been to quite a number of meetings over the last several years, and scientists interested in environmental stuff and activists as well. So I'm going to start by praising the work of Kief that's been done for nearly the past 20 years, going along with comments from the committee on that. I think it's been a really essential part of progress in the city. Work that's been done went often to work on brownfields, which has been very effective, so it's just another example. So I'm going to raise some questions here on this and comments. Just wondering how much city staff time and personnel are assigned to Kief's work as compared to recent years? Is it been being reduced? So that's question number one. Second one is a sort of a combination question and suggestion. I'm wondering if increased effectiveness and productivity could be obtained through Kief with respect to certain complex planning files, which have been coming up in recent years. I'll give 3 examples to that. We had a proposal on mining molassanite out in the countryside area as an extension of mine that was in the Thousand Islands Township. Came to planning recently and then to council. We've had a number of projects involving quarry expansions, which are challenging and difficult projects. And then I guess the third one would be the new spa that was proposed in the rural area, which has issues with, say, drilling wells, for example, right? So we're getting into complex geology, which is environment connected. And I guess my next point is a continuation of this last point. And I'm wondering if there's been any comparison done with respect to Kief concerning other Ontario and Canadian municipalities of similar size on the mandate that it faces and the workload and so forth. I know that Kief is, at the time it was created, I think was virtually a leading edge idea for a city of Kingston size. So I commend everything that has been done by council and members of the community and staff on that, right? We're aiming to be Canada's most sustainable city, and I think Kief's effort has been, monumental and very important. But I'm just wondering if, at any point, there has been an actual comparison done. How are we doing, say, compared to Guelph or Victoria or those cities? So I guess that's the end of my comments. Thank you.
Seeing no other members of the public, we'll go to staff have a chance to respond to the member of the public's questions.
Thank you, Mayor. And to respond to Mr. Dixon's questions, the first one was about staff time that is dedicated towards supporting Kief. That, frankly, is difficult to estimate. Some issues require more time than others, but for each Kief meeting that happens, there's generally 2 staff people there to support it, a technical person and a clerk. So you're in the order of 6 hours per meeting just in terms of attendance. Now, if there are matters before the committee that require reports, then there's however many hours go into writing those reports, reviewing those reports, the administrative process of getting the report on the agenda. So I don't have a clean answer for you, but it's not I'm not going to characterize it as a major burden on staff, but it does contribute to the workload of staff at different amounts depending on the type of issue that's before Kief. Don't want to belabor the point, but you recall when Kief received a pipeline report on the Line 9 pipeline report, that was a significant amount of work for staff to pull all that together. Other reports have been not so resource intensive. The second question you have was about whether or not Kief can work on some of the complex planning files that you mentioned. That is always an option for City Council to direct that kind of work towards Kief, but they would always have to be very cognizant of the timelines associated with doing so. The planning files have to be dealt with in a certain timeline, whether it's site plan control or subdivision or whatever the case is. So you wouldn't want to it's not arbitrarily, but you wouldn't want to slow down the process to the point where you're out of compliance with your planning response timelines. But that's always an option for council to direct those matters to Kief for comment. And you asked also whether or not other cities have committees like Kief and how Kingston is doing in comparison. That's not something we have looked at recently. When we initially formed Kief and during its first few years, we did reach out to other cities to see what they had done. Cornwall was an early example. They had an environmental advisory committee. It was set up more task-oriented. I forget what the issue was that they were dealing with, to be honest, but it was a single issue that they had set up the advisory committee to deal with. Durham was also examined, and they had more of a community sustainability advisory committee, so a slightly broader mandate that eventually morphed into providing support for the development of that community's integrated community sustainability plan. So they started with a broad mandate, kind of like what Kief did, and eventually found their way into a narrowed focus as well. But it has been, I'm going to say, at least 8 or 9 years since we've looked at other communities and whether or not they have similar committees.
Okay, so now we go to deliberations of the business item. It does have a recommendation. It's essentially, the recommendation is that the updated mandate, Exhibit B, be accepted. Does it say accepted? Recommend to council that the bylaw to define the mandated meeting procedures for the committees established by the corporation in the City of Kingston be amended as per Exhibit B. So the amendments that are in the report be officially done, to be amended, right? So that would change the bylaw. So that's the item, and it needs to be moved and seconded to get it on the floor so we can debate. Who wants to move or second? Moved by Councillor Neal, Councillor Holland. Okay, so it's on the floor. It's basically the schedule will become the basis of the updated bylaw. Who would like to offer a comment? Or, yes, Councillor Doherty.
We did it off instead. This in great detail at the last Kief meeting, and we did raise questions about some of the wording, and that has been changed. And the wording and the concern was around ad hoc working groups. And at the end, we felt quite comfortable with the discussion and the result that we can still create ad hoc groups, and when issues arise like the pipelines or other issues, that we can then go to council and get their approval for a working group.
So I guess that would be, just ask staff on that point. So that would be a situation where Kief might recommend to this committee that a working group on pipelines, say, be struck, and then this committee, if it passed, it would go to council, and council would say yea or nay. Is that how that would work?
Correct. It was the concern of the committee was that some people thought the wording that was being proposed would require Kief to basically sit by and wait for instruction on working groups from council, and that wasn't the intention. The intention was that if Kief saw a need for an ad hoc working group, they could raise that as a recommendation and bring it to council.
Right, and standing with bylaws, and maybe the clerk can confirm that a member of the public can also do that. If a member of the public thinks we need to have a working group on water levels of the seaway, for example, they could suggest that, in a letter, and then it would be up to a member of this committee to make a motion, right? That's kind of thing, if we got a suggestion from a member of the public?
Yes, definitely. The mechanisms by why members of council choose to put motions forward can it's at your discretion. Excuse me, at your discretion. So if you do receive a letter from the member of public, it is up to a member of the council to determine if they want to move a motion, but that would be appropriate.
Okay, so Councillor Doherty, you have the floor. Councillor Rosanek.
Thank you. I just want to thank staff for keeping the State of the Environment report on the agenda for Kief to work on. Thank you for doing that. That's what I was looking for.
Any other comments? Councillor Neal.
Just one quick question. As I understand it, under the terms of reference, the intention is clearly that council has an opportunity, or we do through council, to engage Kief either on a research role or to come up with recommendations or suggestions in clearly defined motions. But it's my understanding that under the terms of reference, Kief, if they decide on an initiative, it can come as a Kief report to this committee and then on to council for approval. Is that an accurate summary of what the terms of reference allow for?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I believe so. The intention of the mandate and the way it's worded is to allow Kief to function as an advisory committee to council. So that means council can ask for advice and work from Kief. And if Kief was to identify something that it thought was important through perhaps the state of environment reporting or something like that, it has the opportunity to put that bug in the ear of council, so to speak, and seek authority to do further work.
And I'm looking forward to always having quorum now, which wasn't always the case in the past. And I think clearly we still want the commitment of technical advisors, but by not making them voting members, we'll still value their input, but we'll be able to reach quorum, won't we? Or is there a correction in there?
Yeah, sorry, through you, Mr. Chair. The technical members remain voting members of Kief.
Okay.
And their presence or absence affects quorum. It's only in a situation where an institution has opted not to fill an invited position that would not affect
I
quorum.
appreciate that correction. Thank you.
I can't remember who the vice chair is, but I would like them to take the chair. Councillor Doherty, can I have you take the chair so I can speak?
Sure.
Thank you. Okay, so as just a committee member, I'd like to say that I was happy to see the basic concept of an updated mandate come to Kief. I was also chair of the Heritage Committee for the last 4 years, and it went through some changes and got an updated mandate, and I guess that's not relevant to this report, but I'm just saying I went through that process with Heritage, and the idea of keeping an advisory group fresh by having an update, like an up-to-date mandate, is an excellent one. So the question really for us, in my mind, is does this report and do the changes to the schedule is it satisfactory? So I would say on the point of reducing the membership size, I agree 100% with that suggestion. And I would even suggest that you might even need to reduce it further in the future, because I know from Heritage, we had 13 members at one point, and that's the size of council. It's a little, that's in my mind, it's like once you're the size of council or bigger, which Kief was bigger, you no longer can have really, you have a very formal structure, and you don't have a chance for everyone to give commentary, and you have problems with participation, I guess. And I would say this size, six of us, is an excellent size for targeted work, which is what working groups tend to be, smaller groups, right? So hopefully that we can get smaller groups coming out of Kief for targeted work for working groups. And then the question is 7 or 6 technical representatives and 12, is it 12 members of the public? Oh, right. It's down to 7 members of the public from 12. So that's 5 less members of the public. So I would say, to the point of whether it's reducing the size enough, I would say you're still left with 13 members. However, you've removed 6 members. So you're either there or halfway there, depending on what we see from the new group. But we may hit the other side of things, which is people saying there aren't enough spots on the committee for the members of the public that actually have a lot to contribute. And I would say that could be legitimate, but at the same time, we have this other working group that Councillor Doherty is on that may give opportunity to collect some of that commentary from members of the public. Hopefully it does. But if it doesn't, Kief will logically have to be open to have non-members offering input to what they're doing, and maybe members of the public attending Kief meetings and participating the way that do in other groups. And I guess, Mr. Clerk, that's permitted, right? The members of the public can attend Kief meetings and speak to the committee?
That is correct.
Yeah. So I would say that we're okay. We're okay in that regard, but we may hear about having only 7 members of the public, because it, in the past, has actually been pretty competitive to get on Kief, and this is going to make it ultra competitive. So I guess when nominations doesn't have any work to do, because we have too many members right now, but when we have to fill things in the future, it's going to be like KEDCO, where we get like 30, 40, 50, 100 applications to sit on Kief, and we might only have 1 spot open at the time. So just, I'm okay with it, but just wanted to point out that aspect, that it's probably going to there's going to be some growing pains involved. And to me, the priority should always remain, get it small enough and lean enough to be able to function properly, which I think this updated amendment takes us a long way there. So I will support it. Thank you. Okay. So we've moved and seconded the recommendation, and I don't hear anyone suggesting any amendments. Does anyone else wish to speak before we call the question? We can vote on it without Councillor Oosterhoff, who still have quorum. So all those in favor? Opposed? So that's 5 in favor. And that's unanimous. Okay, that's that item. Next, the Kief report card for 2018. Our staff here to introduce that item.
Mr. Chair, not much to say about this, but it is a documentation of the activities of Kief in 2018.
Okay, that's explanatory. Questions from members of the committee about the 2018 report card? none, members of the public have a chance to ask questions or offer comments.
Yeah, just one item. I think it's already been talked about in the earlier discussion. The working group recently set up by council looking for so-called quick hits on greenhouse gas reduction and climate change topics, especially responding to the climate emergency declaration by council. That looks like it's something that may take the place of what's on, say, page 7 that's been stroked out, right? Say climate change and energy use, this working group shall undertake, and so forth, right? Was that the reason why this group was set up? I'm not sure if staff can answer that because it was a council creation. I agree with what's happened. I think it's a very important aspect to be studied and improved upon. But I'm just wondering if that was the motivation of that, since this has been canceled at Kief with a new group that was created to replace it.
Thank you. Staff has an opportunity to respond.
Mr. Chair, I do note that that's a matter from the previous report, but I will say that I can't really comment on the genesis of the climate change working group. That was a council initiative.
Yeah, so just to reinforce what you just said, even though the subject matter is similar, the procedural structure of this other newly formed committee, the Climate Action Working Group, is that's a working group of council. So it actually it won't come to this committee, I don't think, and it won't interact with Kief except in the form of that one member from Kief that is invited to sit on that committee. I don't know if that's correct, but yeah, okay, thank you. I saw a hand. Did you have your hand up? Councillor Doherty.
So this section, I'm not sure, can I answer the question? Okay.
Go ahead.
So it was the genesis of the climate change working group came through during the strategic planning process when we had a lot of people in the public saying, what are you doing with the community? What are you doing now? And it was a real response to that. We certainly always recognized how all the work that Kief is doing, as well as Sustainable Kingston. And it was just, climate change needs a lot of different strategies. It's just to offer yet another strategy to try to come up with some quick fixes and include more people as well. So that's basically the long and short of it.
Thank you. So we are straying into council business now. We've already established that's a working group of council. It's been debated and amended and so on. Just to repeat that this report is an annual report and of what Kief is doing, and we will get another one for 2019, and it won't be related to the work in any other group, including that one. Sort of self-evident. Anyway, so we're still on the report card. So comments on what's in the report are in order. Councillor Neal.
Yes, and there's report card. There was a recognition that there should be a connection between the working group and Kief. So Kief was invited to appoint a member, and Kief will be meeting, I believe it's next week or the following week, in order to, with a single item agenda, to appoint somebody to that working group, which is great. The terms of reference, just in part to answer the question, the terms of reference for Kief, first of all, Kief is a standing committee of council that reports through EITP, and I know that the primary focus of the working group is the ICI sector. Kief, under its terms of reference, can take a much broader look at it. So next year's report card will include that work that Kief does, as well as its involvement with the the working group, which is slated to be completed by October 31st. So,
Yeah, so I've allowed a little bit of latitude, but it's important that this committee understands how the new working group fits in with what Kief does, so that's why these comments are in order. But really, in the future, I would discourage discussion about the other working group at this committee because it doesn't report to this committee, it reports to council. So that's where we discuss its report. That's the major difference between the two groups is the reporting structure. So as long as we are clear, we're all councillors, we're clear that those two different animals there, and as Councillor Doherty said, having lots of different approaches on the climate is not going to be hurtful. So we need this moved and seconded so that we can actually debate it and make comments. So moved by Councillor Doherty, seconded by Councillor Holland. So I'll read the recommendation. It's pretty logical that the EITP committee recommend to council that the 2018 Kief report card be approved as a summary of the work accomplished by Kief. So before we go into debate, that second clause, from a procedural standpoint, debate on whether or not you're in favor of the report card being the summary of the work is the kind of thing we're supposed to be discussing. So if there's errors or omissions, if there's problems in interpretation of what's in the report, maybe for clarity for the members of the public, if we wanted to change some wording for clarity, that kind of thing. But that's about it. There's not really much else that's in order. So with that said, does anyone wish to comment? And Mr. McClatchy, this will be an annual report at this time, like more or less, or will it be at a different time next time?
There is an annual requirement for Kief to report back to council through EITP in this manner. So I would think about approximately 6 months after the end of the year would be the approximate
So
time to
roughly end of
expect
Q2 like we are right now?
Yes.
Okay, great. Excellent. So if passed, this will become an annual thing, and this is the first version of it. So I guess I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? And that carries. So there's nothing under 8 or 9. On other business, we added an item for, Councillor Neal spoke to adding, it was Kief, what did we say it was?
To do with Kief comments regarding the official plan.
Right. Kief comments on the wording of the official plan. So, Councillor Neal, you have the floor.
time me, I promise, 3 minutes or less. 3 or 4 years ago, when the official plan, the OP, was in draft form, Greg Newman very generously agreed to meet with Roger Healy and myself so we could look through the official plan and target some environmental issues that we might want to address. And thanks to that good work, Greg Newman included within the OP several really good recommendations. One was recognizing permeable hard surfaces. One was installing, for very low cost, a hydro hookup that would allow for an EV charger in a garage or on a new build. And those kinds of things were really, really positive, and there's a number of them within the OP. Unfortunately, they all came in the form of recommendations, and people who are on planning will recognize that those recommendations seldom, if ever, get acted upon. So there has been legislation, and other communities have taken some of those you should do's and made them into you shall do. And in talking with Greg Newman, before unfortunately we lost him, he said he would be quite willing to sit down again with us and review some of those things. And I have shared it with our Director of Planning as well, that idea. So Now, we don't have to do it in a formal way. We can do it as we did before, and just Roger, if he's willing to do it again, and I can do it, and anybody else that wishes to just take 2 or 3 meetings, sit down, look at the OP as it affects the environmental issues, and look to how we can beef it up. So that is just by way of information. I would hope that a report with a recommendation could come back for our August 6th meeting. And if that needs to be in the form of a motion to carry on to council, I'm quite happy to do that. If staff are willing to say we can make it so, that's okay too. So, and that primarily be planning staff. I don't think I'm putting anything more on your desk. Thank you.
Okay, that was, from my listening to that, sounded kind of like a notice of motion of what we're getting on our next, one of the items on our next meeting that we already know is in the works. And that's the item of other business. So now we just have our next meeting, which is August 6th. So it's in the middle of summer, so make sure you put it on your calendars. We did great with full attendance tonight, with all this lovely weather that's coming our way. I think by then maybe the St. Lawrence will have gone down more towards a normal level, hopefully, so that we're not talking about flooding. But anyway, I need a motion to adjourn. Councillor Ozanek, Councillor Osterhoff, all those in favor? You guys in favor of adjournment? Yeah? Okay. And that passes. Thank you very much.